Typically, Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential. And we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal. It's all that a deal is next to impossible. No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
I think he wants to make a deal.
He does need to make a deal. He's desperate to make a deal. Problem is the Iranians. Well, first of all, when he said the Iranians could have made a deal before, that, right after the Israelis tried to assassinate all of them.
Very arguable.
Yeah. But in this case, the Iranians are very hard negotiators. Why? Because they've got the Russian systems behind them, the air defense systems. They have the Chinese Bao'u radar systems. They feel empowered. They've got the backup between Russia and China. So they're not looking to make concessions the way that the Trump administration demanding concessions.
To hear you tell this story, this thing could get really ugly.
Oh, very quickly.
I mean, this thing could get really ugly and involve a whole lot of people and a whole lot of countries and become right away like a regional conflict and possibly even bigger than a regional conflict. Right.
But even if it doesn't go to that, economic-wise, it could. Well, the EU is going to be ruined.
Okay, so militarily, big problem. Let's talk economy. And for doing that, if you could, Gene, give me the tight shot of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, that's the Strait of Hormuz, and there you see the area. Let me just say something, because I've been doing a lot of reading on this, and when I was in Iran, I started looking at this area. I mean, this is so narrow right here. This area, this is the Persian Gulf in here. This is the opening of the Persian Gulf. This is the Indian Ocean. But that is so narrow. Some people say it's like 30, 40 miles.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
You got artillery. You got tube artillery, modern 155, 152 artillery rounds that can breach that. They can go from one coast to the other. So, yeah, you could close that quite easily.
And you close 36% of the oil in the world.
Absolutely.
You stop it.
This area right here is all mountains. There's lots of natural caves. Like I said, there's lots of readouts. Yeah. They have land-to-ship missiles up there. They can pop them up, scoot them back down. So you can easily close. They can mine it. You can scuttle ships in the middle of it to make it more difficult for anybody to get through. You bring a couple of those light torpedo ships they have, the rocket ships, basically gunboats, and you start scuttling them, sinking them. Yeah. And they're in the way. They're in the way of the lines for the big tankers. The tankers can't get in, tankers can get out. 36% of the world's oil. But what does that mean? Here's the problem. It's not just about price going up. You could see prices 150, 200. I'm not going to say 300 or 400 like some people.
Yeah.
But 150, 200. That's a massive economic hit on America, by the way. So the U.S. government, because while the U.S. has enough oil, it's still part of the global market system. Right. Prices are going to go skyrocketing up. Now, the government can either nationalize, I don't think they'll do that, the oil companies, or they'll step in and still install some kind of ceilings, which is still going to be unpopular for obvious reasons. That may hit Wall Street pretty hard. But that's the U.S. Now we go to the EU, and they will physically not have oil. They've cut off Russia. Most of their oil is coming from here. And the kicker is their second biggest provider of natural gas, of liquefied natural gas, is Qatar. And that also passes through here.
In fact, you mentioned China a while ago. China gets most of its oil coming out of this region as well, which is why they're doing a lot of their military exercises.
Right.
They're saying we're not protecting this because we don't want to be fighting the United States. We're not even necessarily protecting Iran. We just want to make sure that our interests are protected there. Right. Yeah.
Now, Russia can supply China with quite a bit of that oil for at least on a short period, because that would be a cut into India's oil and so on. I mean, this is 36% oil. But the point is, it's not just going to be about price. There's literally not going to be enough oil in the world on the market. It's all going to be bottled up sitting here because the supply and demand, they're very tight. And you take a third of that supply out, demand's going to start falling because you're going to have economic recessions. You're going to crush the worst ones hit are going to be the Europeans.
Yeah. You know, I'm wondering if this area here is where the United States needs to be most concerned, because here's what I've heard. And when I say this area, I mean the whole Gulf region. While I was in Iran, I was told by many sources that the Iranians are talking to these countries here. And these countries are assuring Iran that they're pressuring Washington. and trying to disallow, if not forbid, Washington from using their territory to hit Iran. You heard what the Saudis already said. The rest of these countries are saying the same thing. They're saying if you hit them from our territory, they're going to hit us. And we don't want you to do that. So here's the question for you. Is it possible for the United States to engage this theater without using these bases as attack zones?
It's possible, but it's a degradation of force. I mean, you're cutting out at least a portion of the forces that are available to you. There are Air Force bases, there's missile bases for Tomahawk, there are ports, for port facilities. And by the way, Qatar is one of the major American bases, if not the biggest base in the area. And Qatar is not exactly very happy with Israel after Israel.
Can the United States protect Qatar? In fact, can the United States protect 1, 2, 3, all these areas here that are literally practically a stone's throw from Iran? How does the United States ensure these people in these bases and the communities that surround them, you'll be fine, you're not going to get hit? Can they even say that?
The United States assures that by having Raytheon produce 660 Patriot missiles per year. They can't supply Ukraine. They can't defend Israel at this point. The stocks are just down. In 6 months, they have not been able to replenish all the stocks. And in 12 days, the reason the U.S., Israel came begging for the U.S. to come in there and try to end this war because they were out of missiles. They're out of defensive missiles.
So you're saying
and Iranians still have plenty to go.
So you're saying the U.S. probably, based on the capacity and the overload that's been used up in Ukraine, doesn't have enough air defense systems to put in every single one of these places.
They're air defense systems. They don't have ammunition for them. They don't have enough ammunition.
The Patriot missile.
Exactly.
Right.
The Patriot missiles, the THAAD missiles.
Which is the
right. Even the Arrow missiles that the Israelis use.
That's interesting.
They just don't have. You got to figure. You got to shoot 2 missiles for every target on average.
Hoping one of them hits.
Right. On average. Yeah. So sometimes you got to do more. Okay, you may get lucky on some of them. But considering how close, 500 kilometers, how close they are, they could easily overload everything in here.
One final political,
plus drones.
One final political thing to end on. And this is what's interesting. And I thought a lot about this as well. And I thought about you when I had these conversations while I was in Iran with a lot of Iranian academics who tell me, you know why this ain't going to happen, they say? Because not only does the United States have a lot of interest here, Donald Trump has a lot of interest.
Oh, yes, he does.
The Donald Trump family is lousy all over UAE, et cetera. You're not going to dirty up, as we say, a place where you eat.
Yeah.
Do you think?
But there's one point that has even more control over Donald Trump.
It's Israel.
It's Israel.
Yeah.
It's the Israeli lobby in the U.S. How much money did they give to his campaign? It's around $300 million.
Well, the Miriam Adelson gave him $300 million. When you combine it with what her husband gave her.
Right. So if you're looking at that choke point, I mean, Netanyahu went 7 times to the U.S. in the first year of the Trump administration, this Trump administration. 7 times. It's almost unheard of.
Well, he's not in a good place poll-wise. He's got a lot of problems. But some presidents, when they're not in a good place poll-wise, i.e. Bill Clinton with Monica, that's when they strike. Because they want the public to look at the squirrel. And that may be the case as well. We don't know.
You got Epstein on all the titles. You've got the economy. Absolutely. You know the saying, when all else fails, they take you to war.
Yeah. Smedley Butler?
Smedley Butler.
Thank you for the quote. Great job as usual.
Thank you.
It's always fantastic when you take us through this from a military standpoint and are able to show us what this theater could become, and we all hope it doesn't.
Of course.
It doesn't.
Like I said, the best thing Donald Trump could do is send a frigate up to the Straits of Hormuz, say, see, the Iranians are afraid to close it. They're afraid of us. Let's go home. And end this.
Yeah, your mouth to God's ears.
Or at least to Donald Trump's.
So that's it for us. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll be looking for you next time. As we usually say here, thank you so much. Send us your comments. If you agree, disagree, or think he's wrong and I'm right, or vice versa, let us know. You can find me, of course, at Twitter. That's Rick Sanchez TV. Or you can find me on BitChute soon. Or you can find me on YouTube as well at Journalistically Speaking. Thank you so much for letting us into your homes, and we'll be looking for you next time.